What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the first Capybara Go video of the channel of many more. I've been playing this game for the last couple of months, a little bit over that, and well, just a couple weeks ago, I reached 1 billion combat power. As you can see, I'm actually almost 2 billion at this point, but it does do some leaps every once in a while. But I wanted to share a few things that might make your process easier as you're going through and attempting to reach 1 billion yourself, or maybe you're even past that point, and maybe some of these things could help you even then. But certainly make your job at least a little bit easier than what I had. And to start us off here, we're going to talk about just overall planning. This game is pretty forgiving in terms of being able to reset a lot of the things, getting your resources back if you should want to change what you're doing. But that said, there are unlocks that are kind of difficult to change after you've picked them up from various events that you're doing. And one of those things is, well, when you're starting out, you really want to focus in on a specific weapon. Now, there are a lot of options, and generally there are really 3 or 4 that people recommend. Oftentimes, the melee weapons are going to be the most efficient in terms of getting resources for. But regardless of what you choose, whether it's the Sky Splitter, whether it's Whisperer like I have, or the Durian Hammer, or Reaper Staff, it's just kind of getting an overall guideline and prioritizing the heroes, brands, gear, etc. that are going to work with that weapon. Doesn't have to be entirely specific because there are options to swap later on. But in the first couple to, you mean half a year of playing, it is really tough to both get the resources that you're looking for, apply your resources, and also, if you were going to change them, get the swap tickets for all of that as well. You start to diversify and slow down your progress a ton. Just starting out with a specific plan, and you can see, as for myself, I actually did my initial change here. I was at the beginning. Oh, Sky Splitter. That seems like a pretty good option. Let's go ahead and pick up the Sky Splitter and start going in that direction. I pick up the Archon and everything. And then I realized, well, I actually like the Dagger Bow. Let's go with Whisper. That's going to be pretty fun. And then I just kind of committed to the Whisperer for a while. I started picking up the brands for it. And then I realized, well, it's kind of difficult to swap back at this point. So that's something that you really kind of just want to plan out at the beginning. Doesn't have to be the permanent weapon forever, but at least planning out so that you can progress to certain things like being able to sweep a lot of the standard challenges. That would definitely help you out here in the long run. The second thing, as we dive into picking up a weapon, is actually spreading out your resources that you have at the beginning. So yes, we pick a weapon. There are going to be brands and heroes that are good. And as I said, have a plan. But at the same token, don't focus super hard on the best version of that plan. For example, one of the best couple of heroes are going to be the Spring Orchid and the Knight of the End, especially even into mid to semi-late game for the Whisperer. These are really good options. However, Spring Orchid requires the Ranger books. You know, it also requires the Ranger books, Joker. You know, it also requires the Ranger books, the Ranger Legacy, which is usually the go-to option, at least until you're able to get the Mythic Whisperer. That's a lot of books. Okay, that's a lot of books, and it starts to double and triple and quadruple up to the point where you can't actually spread out and get a lot of power boost in the beginning of the game. Now, if I were to just, let's say, change my mind here, I can get all these books back. Now, you won't be able to get the shards back, but if you're focused too much on one specific book type, then you will find yourself just waiting for progression anyways, and the resources that you could have spent on, like, say, another hero or another brand to give you temporary progression will actually just give you more resources in the long run than focusing in on the best options, right? That's the key. So for this, instead of going, you know, Spring Orchid and your Joker and all these options like perhaps I did here, changing it up and going for a different one that uses different books, especially in the early game, can really help you push through a lot of early stages to where you're actually going to get a lot of those resources back. And again, you can get all your books back. It's just about getting the shards. And guess what? The rate that you earn your character shards is going to outpace the books that you actually receive, assuming you aren't purchasing a bunch of things on the side if you're free to play to low spender or just ad card like I am / lifetime card. That's kind of the natural progression of things. And on that note, because we talked a lot about books, one of the big things that I recommend you start as soon as possible is every single day, make sure that you're picking up all of the books possible. Now, I personally omit the dragon books at the current moment, but that might be a mistake in the long run. We will see once the Dragon Legacy actually comes out. But it also costs double the amount as the other ones. Regardless of where the dragon book is going to be, as soon as you possibly can, after you initially get the Elite Legacy, and depending on how much gold you're actually getting as you go along, you're going to want to buy books every single day. And the reason for this is you will run out of books extremely quick. You will run out of books extremely quick between your Elite Legacy progression and the books that you're going to be investing into your heroes and brands. You'll run out of books faster than you can acquire them, assuming you are actually being able to diversify your assets here. So with that, as soon as you can, use your gold on these books. Now, again, depending on where you're at before your Elite Legacy, you're going to be investing all that gold in upgrading your attack, defense, and HP. And that usually is a priority. But once you get past that and you're into the Elite Legacy, you want to ignore the gold that you could be spending on speed ups and really focusing on the books. Because again, the books will be the bottleneck, not the time associated with it, unless you're really not actually checking the game even a couple times a day to just reset the progression on the legacy and keep kind of that timer running. Along that note here, while we're getting the books and everything like that, and what we talked about brands, one of the other things that really is important is while we are trying to make a plan, trying to get our resources invested, there are a few resources that you should be saving and a few resources that you should always be spending. For example, the artifact hammers here 100% should be spending at all times. Another one that you should be spending is your pet treats at all times. And the reason for this is there's no event associated with spending these resources. So just holding on to them just kind of weaken your progression for the long run. On another note, you should be saving a lot of other tickets or a lot of other resources, such as your horseshoes for your mount progression, your pet eggs for the pet growth event, your spirit stones with your pet build progression here should be saved as well for various different events. The chests that you have over in your chest category, besides the gem chests, which don't count towards the gem opening progression, all should be saved for those growth events. Because if you don't, you will get a significantly reduced amount of the growth tickets, which you could be spending on all of the various different mounts. The Dark Moon tickets, the gold and the blue ones here, are used to unlock the advanced mounts. And that is the last thing that I wanted to mention to you all as another tip to go ahead and increase your progression speed is don't just focus in on, again, the min-maxed version of your build. I said this a lot. Make a plan, but diversify, because those resources can always be returned to you. And in some cases, those resources will give you a ton of progression, right? In this case, with mounts, there are a bunch of global bonuses, and this may not be new, but a lot of people don't actually know that certain things are global bonuses and are active all the time, whereas others are not. For example, if you have all these different mounts, you will only use one skill. That's not a global bonus. So unlocking a bunch of the mounts for the skills obviously isn't that great, but each of the mounts has a global effect. For example, the Luminous Dragon gives you the 10% attack, Catastrophe gives you the 10% defense, Sphinx gives you the 10% crit rate, Diego gives the 10% HP percentage. All of these are global bonuses. So while you're saving up your resource for the growth events, making sure you're unlocking each of these various different mounts is going to generate a ton of global bonuses for you. And things like the Laputa giving you combo rate is just incredibly powerful. Toffee giving you the 10% damage reduction is incredibly powerful. After you've unlocked all of them, that's when you can start really focusing in and getting duplicate copies of whatever mount you're going to be using in the late game. But until then, you're going to get a lot more progression by getting these global bonuses picked up. And the same thing applies for a lot of other situations. Any artifacts that may have, global bonuses to them, things like, the spear or the Pengu axe giving the global HP. The same thing applies here. Yes, you could focus in and start leveling up and awakening these, artifacts. But in doing so and getting, a bunch of extra copies of these, you're missing out on a ton of the global bonuses. Some of them are weaker than others, like ignoring crit rate, ignoring combo rate and all that type of stuff can be a little bit weaker than just global HP, global attack and things like that. So it depends on specific circumstances. But again, acquiring these global bonuses and using them for your advantage is a very significant bonus to your overall account and will help you in the long run instead of just sitting around and waiting to pick up copies. And eventually it's going to cost multiple copies of your mount to actually awaken, and that can be a lot weaker. But those are just kind of a few things, very, very general, on what I've learned as my build up to 1 billion combat power. And the name of the game here is there's a lot that can be refunded to you. So as you're going along, spend. It's usually better to be spending your resources than saving them in terms of investing into a character or a piece of gear or a brand or a hero, because a lot of the times later on you can just go ahead and refund all of those resources and, you know, maybe reallocate them. And the progression you'll gain, especially in the first 3 weeks, is going to really benefit from you going ahead and spending your resources. But there are a few exceptions. As I mentioned, timing your expenditure around certain events can really help you gain some global unlocks and help your progression even further. So let me know what your kind of random tips are as you're reaching your way through the first billion or a couple billion or 5 billion or 6 billion, whatever it is, as you're going along. I'm going to be having another video for you all tomorrow and every day hereafter. I got a lot to say, a lot to talk about, and I am excited for tomorrow's video where we're going to be talking about some events. Thank you for everyone for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.